There are 200 names in a list that most people have never read. They are not the names of kings. They are not the names of conquerors or emperors or generals who rewrote the borders of nations. They are the names of divine beings, beings of fire and light and ancient, terrible intelligence, who looked down from the heights of heaven at a young, raw, magnificent world and made the single most catastrophic choice in the history of the cosmos. They chose to fall. And the world they fell into was never the same again. What followed their descent was not a fairy tale. It was not mythology. It was not the harmless fantasy of a prescientific culture trying to explain the darkness around them. What followed was an event so catastrophic, so cosmically destabilizing, that the oldest texts in human civilization, from the clay tablets of Sumer to the mountain libraries of Ethiopia, all describe it the same way, as the moment the boundary between heaven and earth was shattered. The 200 watchers, their names, their crime, their punishment, and the world they left behind. This is the true story. When heaven watched earth, it is approximately 3000 BCE, though the events we are about to describe are placed, by the ancient texts themselves, in an era before history had a name. You are standing at the summit of a mountain the texts call Mount Hermon, a peak that rises 9,232 feet above the Levantine coast, its crown perpetually covered in snow and cloud, its slopes silent and cold and impossibly ancient. The Hebrew name for this mountain, Hermon, derives from the root herem, meaning a devoted thing, a thing set apart, consecrated, or cursed. Even today, if you stand at the base of Mount Hermon, in what is now the disputed territory of the Golan Heights, you feel it. Something heavy lives in the air at that altitude, something that resists easy explanation, ancient, watching. The text we are drawing from tonight is not a fringe document. It is not a forgotten fragment of obscure folklore. The Book of Enoch, formerly known as 1 Enoch, is one of the oldest religious texts in the world, predating the New Testament by at least 3 centuries. It was quoted directly in the biblical letter of Jude. It was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, hidden in the caves of Qumran in 1947, meaning it was considered sacred enough by the community that preserved it to be buried alongside the Torah itself. Scholars at Oxford, Cambridge, and the Hebrew University of Jerusalem have studied it for over 200 years. It begins with a question that every human being who has ever lived has implicitly asked: where did evil come from? The answer the ancient text gives is specific, precise, almost uncomfortably detailed. Before the creation of humanity, the text tells us, the Creator appointed a class of divine beings to watch over the earth. Their title, in the ancient Aramaic, is Irin, the Watchers. They were not minor functionaries. They were not messenger angels sent on brief errands between heaven and earth. They were governors, guardians, the divine council charged with observing and administering the development of the newly created world and the human civilization beginning to emerge within it. The Book of Enoch, chapter 1, verse 5, describes them as the ones who watch all the things that are done among men. Chapter 12 calls them the eternal watchers, beings who do not sleep, do not tire, do not require the rhythms of rest that sustain mortal life. Here is the counterintuitive fact that most people never encounter. The Watchers were not inherently evil. They were not the enemy. They were the guardians. They were placed at their posts because the creation of humanity was precious, a sacred experiment in free will, in love, in the capacity of a mortal creature to choose light over darkness. The Watchers were meant to ensure that experiment could unfold in safety and dignity. But something began to happen. The longer they watched, the more they saw, and the more they saw, the more deeply they felt something that divine beings, with their vast intelligence and ancient perspective, had perhaps never been designed to feel. Desire, The Book of Enoch, chapter 6, opens with words that still carry their weight across 3,000 years of reading. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. This was not a sudden, uncontrolled impulse. This was deliberate, premeditated, organized. Because what happened next reveals something about the Watchers that most interpreters of this story have never fully reckoned with. They had a leader. His name was Semyaza. One name, one choice. The leader who would not stand alone. Semyaza stands at the edge. Not a metaphorical edge, a literal one. According to the oldest stratum of the Enochic tradition, the place of the Watchers' deliberate descent is Mount Hermon itself, and the moment of decision is described with the precision of a military council convening before a campaign. Semyaza is not an ordinary Watcher. He holds the rank the text calls Resh, the chief. He is the commanding officer of his order, and he understands, with a clarity that makes his choice all the more sobering, exactly what he is about to do. He says so directly. Book of Enoch, chapter 6, verse 3. And Semyaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. Read that again, slowly. The leader of the Watchers, the chief of a 200-strong cohort of divine guardians, is afraid that he alone will bear the consequences. He wants them all to swear an oath. He will not move forward unless every single one of them is equally bound, equally implicated, equally accountable. This is not passion-overwhelming reason. This is strategic, calculated. Semyaza knows this is sin. He knows it is catastrophic, and he refuses to fall alone. They answered him, all 200 of them. They swore the oath together on the summit of Mount Hermon. The text records their collective words with devastating simplicity. We shall all of us swear an oath, and bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. 200 divine beings, one summit, one oath, one catastrophic covenant. Here is what makes the oath of Mount Hermon uniquely terrifying in the landscape of ancient theological literature. It was designed to prevent repentance. In every other tradition of divine rebellion, including the fall of the figure described in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28, identified by most scholars as the adversary, there is a single will, a single decision, a single point of failure. But Semyaza's genius, if you can call it that, was to bind his entire company in collective sin so complete that no individual could step back from the brink without abandoning all the others. He created a moral trap, a structure of mutual destruction from which no single Watcher could extract himself without betraying every one of his companions. This is why the story of the Watchers is unlike any other story of divine rebellion in ancient literature. It is the only one that is fundamentally about peer pressure at a cosmic scale. 200 beings who knew exactly what they were doing, who said it out loud, who swore an oath to do it anyway, because they did not want to be alone in their fall. The text records their names, all of them. This is not a narrative convenience. It is a deliberate act of ancient accountability. These are not anonymous forces of darkness. They are individuals, each with a name, each with a rank, each making a personal choice. Let us speak several of them. Semyaza, their chief, Urakabaramil, Akibil, Tamiel, Ramuel, Danel, Azkiel, Saraknial, Asael, whose role in what comes next will prove the most catastrophic of all. Armers, Batral, Anane, Zakebe, Samsavil, Ertael, Turel, Yomyael, Azazel. 18 named leaders, 200 total. Each name pressed into the record like a stylus into wet clay, permanent, unerasable, answerable. They descended, and the earth received them. What Azazel taught humanity. The descent of the Watchers was not only a sexual transgression, that is the most widely discussed element of the story, and it is significant, but it is not the most consequential dimension of what they did. The most consequential thing the Watchers did was teach. Book of Enoch, chapter 8. This is where the story becomes something that academic scholars of ancient history have grappled with in ways that have no comfortable resolution. The Watchers brought knowledge. Not abstract knowledge, not philosophy or art or poetry. They brought applied knowledge, technical, practical, transformative knowledge that humanity had not yet reached through its own natural development. And the leader of this catastrophic education program was not Semyaza. It was a Watcher named Azazel. In the hierarchy of the 200, Azazel holds a unique position. He is associated in later Jewish tradition with the scapegoat of Leviticus 16, the goat driven into the wilderness to carry the sins of the nation, sent to a desolate place for Azazel. Most modern Bible translations simply render this phrase as the scapegoat. But the original Hebrew preserves a name that points directly to this moment in the Enochic tradition. Azazel's sin, according to the text, was the most far-reaching because his gift was the most dangerous. Book of Enoch, chapter 8, verse 1. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth, and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. Swords, metallurgy, weapons of war, and, in the same breath, cosmetics, jewelry, vanity. The ancient text does not separate these two categories. It treats them as equally corrupting. The knowledge of how to kill efficiently and the knowledge of how to make oneself artificially beautiful are presented as twin gifts from the same fallen teacher. Both are technologies of power. Both are means of domination, over enemies, over the eyes of others. But Azazel was not alone in his teaching. The other Watcher leaders each brought their own forbidden curricula. Book of Enoch, chapter 8, verses 2 through 4 continues. Semyaza taught enchantments and root cuttings. Armoros taught the resolving of enchantments. Archangels taught astrology. Kokabel taught the constellations. Ezekiel the knowledge of the clouds. Arachiel the signs of the earth. Shamsiel the signs of the sun. Sariel the course of the moon. Astrology, weather divination, earth signs, solar cycles, lunar calendars. Here is the counterintuitive fact that reshapes this entire story. Some of what the Watchers taught was not inherently evil in content. The course of the moon, the signs of the constellations. These are observations of the natural world. In isolation, they are not corrupting. But the ancient text insists that the timing of this knowledge, given to humanity before they had the moral and spiritual development to handle it, was itself the catastrophe. Like handing a 6-year-old child a loaded weapon that they lack the judgment to carry safely. The danger is not in the weapon alone. It is in the gap between the power and the wisdom required to wield it. The Watchers accelerated human civilization in ways that its moral development could not match. And the result was precisely what you would expect when technology outpaces wisdom by 10,000 years. Violence, everywhere, immediately. Book of Enoch, chapter 7, verse 5, describes the aftermath. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. The entire created order unraveled, not slowly, not gradually, with shocking, terrifying speed. The Nephilim, the offspring of the Watchers' union with human women, were enormous. The text specifies their height as 3,000 ells, a measurement that scholars debate, but which conveys a physical scale that dwarfs ordinary humanity. They consumed everything. They exhausted the resources the earth could produce, and when the food ran out, they turned on each other. the earth filled with blood. And somewhere far above, in whatever realm the ancient texts describe as heaven, 4 archangels heard the sound of it. Heaven hears the cry. It is chapter 9 of the Book of Enoch. And the 4 archangels, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel, are looking down. The text describes what they observe with a specificity that reads less like mythology and more like a disaster report from divine field agents. They saw much blood being shed upon the earth, and all lawlessness being wrought upon the earth. And they said one to another, "The earth made without inhabitant cries the voice of their crying up to the gates of heaven. And now to you, the holy ones of heaven, the souls of men make their suit, saying, Bring our cause before the Most High." The souls of the dead are petitioning heaven directly. The earth itself is crying out, and 4 of the most powerful divine beings in the ancient cosmic hierarchy stand at the gates of the divine realm and listen to the sound of a world being destroyed by the choices of 200 of their own order. Here is the theological detail that most people who know this story have never stopped to fully absorb. The 4 archangels do not act immediately. They do not descend and begin fighting. They do something far more significant. They bring a report. This is not a minor procedural detail. This is a profound statement about the structure of the ancient cosmos as the Book of Enoch understands it. Even archangels of the rank of Michael and Gabriel do not act unilaterally in a crisis. They bring the evidence before the throne. They present the case. They allow justice to be dispensed from its proper source. They act as witnesses. Book of Enoch, chapter 9, verses 6 through 10. The archangels present their case in extraordinary detail before the Almighty. They name Azazel specifically. They describe his teaching. They describe the Nephilim. They describe the violence and the bloodshed and the devouring of life. And then they ask the question that has hung over this entire story from the beginning. And thou knowest all things before they come to pass. And thou seest these things, and thou dost suffer them. And thou dost not say to us what we are to do to them in regard to these. This is one of the most remarkable prayers in all of ancient literature. The archangels are not simply asking for permission to act. They are, with unmistakable boldness, asking why the Creator allowed this to happen at all. Why did you let this go so far? What do you want us to do? The answer comes in chapter 10, and it is not gentle. Each of the 4 archangels receives a specific commission. Each is sent to deal with a specific dimension of the catastrophe. The precision of the divine response is itself a message. This is not an emergency improvisation. This is a judicial proceeding, executed with exact intentionality. Uriel is sent to warn Noah. The flood is coming. The world will be cleansed. One righteous man and his family will be preserved. Uriel's commission is the most intimate of the 4. A single conversation with a single man standing at the edge of the end of the world, being told that he and his family are the only ones who will survive it. Raphael receives his orders next. He is sent for Azazel. Book of Enoch, chapter 10, verses 4 through 6. And again the Lord said to Raphael, Bind Azazel, hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, and cast him therein, and place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face, that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire, bound, cast into a pit, covered with rocks, his face turned from the light, forever, not until repentance, not pending appeal, forever, with the specific notation that on the day of the great judgment, the binding will be exchanged for fire. Raphael executes his orders. The most dangerous teacher in human history is silenced in a desert pit, face down in the dark, buried under the weight of the very earth he helped corrupt. Gabriel's commission targets the Nephilim directly. Book of Enoch, chapter 10, verse 9. Gabriel is told to proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, and against the children of fornication. He is to stir them against one another. The Nephilim, already devouring everything around them, will turn on each other. They will destroy themselves. Gabriel's role is not to slaughter them directly. It is to withdraw the restraint that was keeping their self-destruction at bay. When giants begin killing each other, no further force is required. And then, Michael. Michael receives the largest commission, the most complex, the one that deals directly with the 200 watchers who swore the oath on Mount Hermon. What Michael was told to do, justice without mercy, precisely measured. Book of Enoch, chapter 10, verses 11 through 15. These are the most precise judicial sentences in all of ancient apocalyptic literature. Read them slowly. And the Lord said unto Michael, Go, bind Semyaza and his associates, who have united themselves with women, so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when their sons have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, till the day of their judgment and of their consummation, till the judgment that is forever and ever is consummated. 70 generations, not 70 years, not 7 centuries, 70 generations, in the ancient Near Eastern reckoning, a period so vast as to be practically synonymous with until the end of time. But notice the specific cruelty, if you can call divine justice cruel, of the timing. The watchers are not bound immediately. They are forced to watch. They are compelled to witness the destruction of the Nephilim, the children they chose over obedience, the reason they swore the oath on Hermon, the living justification they gave themselves for their fall. Every one of those enormous, violent, catastrophically powerful sons, destroyed, killed by each other, fed into the grinding machinery of their own nature, the violence their fathers had enabled, turned inward, becoming the instrument of their extinction. Only then are the watchers bound. Book of Enoch, chapter 10, verse 12, specifies the binding with 4 explicit details that read like a legal sentence. Bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, till the day of their judgment. 70 generations, valleys of the earth, not the abyss, not the outer darkness, but the actual physical terrain of the planet they chose over heaven. Their prison is the world they fell to reach. There is something almost unbearable in that detail. They wanted the earth. They chose the earth. They bound themselves to the earth with an oath of their own making, and so the earth becomes their prison. Chapter 10 continues with a description of what comes after the 70 generations, and this is where the story enters territory that most commentators avoid because it is genuinely difficult to process. Verse 13, In those days they shall be led off to the abyss of fire, and to the torment and the prison in which they shall be confined forever. The abyss of fire, permanent, no further appeals, no further stays of judgment. But here is the detail that stops even seasoned scholars of this text. The 200 watchers are not simply destroyed, they are preserved in punishment. The text specifies that the period of binding in the valleys of the earth is temporary, a prelude, not a conclusion. They remain conscious, they remain sentient. They experience the passage of those 70 generations, which means they experience guilt, memory, the full weight of what they chose. This is not the merciful unconsciousness of death. This is the specific, deliberate design of a justice system that wants the condemned to understand fully what they have done. Semyaza himself receives a specific additional sentence that distinguishes him from the others. The later Enochic tradition, preserved in the Greek and Ethiopic manuscripts, describes Semyaza as bound in a position that mirrors his original role. He who watched the earth from above is now pinned, face down, looking at the stars he abandoned. The constellation Orion, in some traditions of Jewish astronomical mysticism, is associated with Semyaza, a giant figure suspended between heaven and earth, belonging to neither. Whether you take that identification literally or symbolically, the image it conveys is devastating. the leader of the Watchers, frozen in the posture of longing for the realm he betrayed, unable to return to heaven, unable to fully inhabit the earth. Suspended, sentenced to exist in the very in-between space that his oath created. The flood, and what survived it. What the water could not drown. The flood comes. It is the most documented catastrophic event in ancient world literature, preserved not only in Genesis but in the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, the Akkadian Atrahasis epic, the ancient Indian Matsya Purana, and dozens of oral traditions across Mesoamerica, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Islands. The convergence of flood memory across cultures that had no contact with each other is itself one of the most compelling, unexplained phenomena in the study of human history. Something happened. Uriel warned Noah. Noah built. The windows of heaven opened, and the fountains of the great deep broke apart. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain fell without interruption. The highest mountains, including, the text implies, the snow-covered summit of Hermon itself, were submerged beneath 15 cubits of water. The world drowned. The Nephilim drowned with it. Their enormous physical bodies, the product of the forbidden union between divine and human, sank beneath the water and did not rise again. But here is the fact that the Book of Enoch preserves, and that the canonical book of Genesis does not directly address. The bodies of the Nephilim died in the flood. Their spirits did not. Book of Enoch, chapter 15, verses 8 through 10. And now the giants, who are produced from the spirits and flesh, shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they are born from men, and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. The Nephilim, half human, half divine, could not be fully claimed by death, because part of their nature was not mortal. But they could not return to heaven, because they had been born into sin. They exist in a state of perpetual displacement, unable to die completely, unable to ascend. They roam the earth, homeless, driven by the same hungers their physical bodies once pursued, but now without the capacity to satisfy those hungers. This is the Enochic origin of what the tradition calls evil spirits or unclean spirits. Entities that afflict the living, possess the willing, and seek embodiment because they are constitutionally incapable of rest. Chapter 15, verse 11, and the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. They hunger. They thirst, they destroy, but they cannot eat, they cannot drink. They exist in a state of perpetual craving, without the possibility of satisfaction. This is, the ancient text argues, not random demonic activity. It is the specific, logical consequence of a specific transgression. The Nephilim were created by desire, the desire of the Watchers for what they were not meant to have. And they exist now as desire without fulfillment, need without resolution, hunger without food. The flood cleansed the earth of the Nephilim's physical presence. Noah stepped out of the ark into a cold, silent world and built an altar on the washed earth. But the spirits remained, invisible, persistent, driven by the original transgression of their fathers, the 200, who swore an oath on a mountain and then refused to stand alone in their consequences. Here is the counterintuitive dimension of this that most readers of Genesis miss entirely. The flood did not solve the problem of the Watchers. It solved the problem of the Nephilim's physical presence. It reset the human population to a single righteous family. But it did not undo the knowledge the Watchers had transferred. It did not erase from human consciousness the metallurgy, the weaponry, the astrology, the enchantments that Azazel and Semyaza and their companions had taught. That knowledge survived in the memory of Noah, in the memory of his sons. And as those suns spread across the renewed earth, they carried with them the double inheritance of humanity, the original design for communion with the Creator, and the corrupted acceleration of fallen knowledge. The question of which inheritance would dominate the story of civilization was not settled by the flood. It was only just beginning. From Sumer to Babylon to the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Watchers did not vanish from human consciousness with the closing of the Ark's door. They survived in memory, in text, in the sacred literature of every major civilization that arose in the ancient Near East in the centuries following the flood. In Sumerian religious texts, specifically the Apkallū tradition, which predates the Enochic literature by at least 1,000 years, scholars have identified what appears to be an independent cultural memory of the same event. The Apkallū are 7 semi-divine sages sent before the flood to teach humanity the arts of civilization. They are depicted in ancient Mesopotamian art as winged human figures, exactly the iconography the ancient world used for divine beings who crossed the boundary between heaven and earth. They teach, they descend, they bring forbidden knowledge. The parallel to the Watchers is not subtle. Dr. Amar Anas of the University of Tartu, one of the foremost scholars of this connection, published a landmark comparative study in 2010 documenting the extraordinary correspondence between the Enochic Watcher tradition and the Mesopotamian Apkallū mythology. His conclusion: both traditions are drawing on the same ancient cultural memory of a catastrophic breach between the divine and human worlds. This is not a borrowed myth. This is the same event, remembered differently by 2 civilizations that developed independently of each other. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947, among the most significant finds was the presence of multiple copies of the Book of Enoch in the caves of Qumran. The community that produced these scrolls, the Essenes, a Second Temple Jewish sect operating roughly from 200 BCE to 68 CE, preserved the Book of Enoch alongside the Torah and the Psalms. This was not casual preservation. The Essenes were meticulous. They did not include texts in their library that they did not consider authoritative. More remarkable still, fragments of the Book of Enoch found at Qumran date to the 3rd century BCE, predating the writing of the New Testament by 200 to 300 years. The text is not a product of early Christianity. It is deeply, unambiguously Jewish. It belongs to the same world that produced the Dead Sea community, the temple priesthood, the Pharisaic tradition. And it was considered, by at least one New Testament writer, to be worth quoting directly. Jude 1:14 and 15, and Enoch also, the 7th from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints, to execute judgment upon all. This is a direct quotation from Book of Enoch, chapter 1, verse 9. The author of the letter of Jude, a letter included in the canonical New Testament, treats the Book of Enoch as prophetic scripture. He quotes it as authoritative. He attributes its authorship to Enoch, 7 generations from Adam. Whatever one believes about the theological status of the Book of Enoch, its influence on early Jewish and Christian thought about the Watchers is beyond historical dispute. It shaped the worldview of the communities that produced the New Testament. The Watchers were not a marginal tradition, they were central. And in one corner of the Christian world, the Book of Enoch never left the canonical Bible at all. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, one of the oldest Christian institutions in the world, tracing its origins to the 4th century CE, has always included the Book of Enoch in its biblical canon. While the Western Church gradually relegated it to the category of pseudepigrapha, texts considered useful but not canonical, the Ethiopian Church maintained it as scripture. For 1,700 years, Ethiopian Christians have read about Semyaza and Azazel and the 200 Watchers as they read about Moses and David and the Apostles. This is not a footnote. It is a different answer to the question of what the ancient world believed about the origin of evil, an answer preserved, intact, in a living religious tradition to this day. The Watchers do not disappear from the story when the New Testament opens. They reappear, briefly, cryptically, but unmistakably, in the letters of two of the most significant writers in early Christian history, Peter, and Paul's companion, the author of the letter to the Jude. 1 Peter 3:18 through 20 contains one of the most debated passages in the entire New Testament. Peter, writing about the significance of Christ's death and resurrection, makes a statement that has puzzled interpreters for 2 millennia. For Christ also hath once suffered for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but quickened by the Spirit, by which also he went and preached unto the spirits in prison, which sometime were disobedient, when once the long-suffering of God waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was a-preparing. Spirits in prison, disobedient in the days of Noah. The imagery is unmistakable to anyone who has read the Book of Enoch. The Watchers, bound in the valleys of the earth, imprisoned for 70 generations, are the spirits in prison. And the passage implies that at some point between his death and resurrection, Christ made a proclamation to those imprisoned spirits. What was the proclamation? The text does not specify. Scholars have debated it for 2,000 years. Was it a proclamation of condemnation, confirming their sentence? Was it an offer of redemption? Was it simply a declaration that the power that bound them had now, through the resurrection, been placed in full submission to the authority of the risen Christ? The text does not say. Peter does not explain. But the fact that the most prominent apostle in early Christianity considers the imprisoned Watchers relevant enough to mention in a letter about the resurrection is itself significant. The Watchers are not a dead story. They are a living theological reality in the worldview of the first Christians. 2 Peter 2:4 is even more direct. For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness, to be reserved unto judgment. Chains of darkness, reserved unto judgment. The language is Enochic through and through. The Greek word Peter uses for hell here is Tartarus, the deepest pit in Greek cosmology, reserved for the most catastrophic divine offenders in the Greek mythological tradition. This is the only use of this word in the entire New Testament. Peter reaches into Greek cosmological vocabulary to describe the place of the Watchers' imprisonment, because Tartarus was the precise term his Greco-Roman audience would recognize as the deepest, most hopeless prison in the divine order. He was speaking their language, but he was describing Enoch's Watchers. And here is the counterintuitive theological fact that most modern Christians have never been told. The traditional Christian doctrine of the fall of Satan, the single rebellious angel cast from heaven, is not the only model of divine rebellion present in the New Testament. Running alongside it, in the letters of Peter and Jude, and in the background of multiple gospel narratives, is the Watcher tradition, the story of 200 divine beings who made a collective, premeditated choice, and whose consequences the New Testament treats as an ongoing, unresolved reality. The spirits in prison are still there, still bound, still awaiting the judgment that the 70 generations are building toward. The New Testament does not close the story of the Watchers. It places it on a timeline. It says their imprisonment is real, their judgment is coming, and the event of the resurrection is directly relevant to their ultimate fate. This is not mythology being echoed in later theology. This is the original tradition, still alive, still structuring the way the earliest Christians understood the supernatural order of the cosmos. And then, silence. The councils of the Western Church gradually moved the Book of Enoch out of the canon. The Watchers became a footnote. Semyaza and Azazel became names that only specialists knew. The tradition was not destroyed. It was archived, and it waited there, in the caves of Qumran, in the mountains of Ethiopia, in the footnotes of German biblical scholarship in the 19th century, until the Dead Sea Scrolls blew the archive open again. It is 1947. The world is still reordering itself in the aftermath of the Second World War. A Bedouin shepherd named Muhammad Ed-Dib, 16 years old according to most accounts, is searching for a lost goat in the limestone ravines above the Dead Sea. He throws a stone into a cave opening to flush the animal out. He hears the sound of pottery breaking. He lowers himself into the cave. He finds clay jars. Inside the jars, wrapped in linen, are scrolls, leather manuscripts of extraordinary antiquity. Muhammad Ed-Dib does not know what he has found. Nobody does yet. Within a decade, systematic excavation of 11 caves around Qumran produces approximately 900 manuscripts, the largest collection of pre-Christian Jewish texts ever discovered. Among them, 7 copies of the Book of Enoch in Aramaic, older than any previously known manuscript of the text, dating to a period when the first Christian communities were just beginning to form. The Watchers had been archived for nearly 2,000 years. They were now, once again, in the light. The scholarly response was extraordinary. R.H. Charles, the Oxford theologian and linguist who had produced the first modern critical edition of the complete Book of Enoch in 1906, working from Ethiopian manuscripts, was vindicated. His work, which had been treated with cautious skepticism by some corners of the biblical studies establishment, was now confirmed by the Dead Sea material. The Book of Enoch was real. It was ancient, it was Jewish, and it was, at minimum, deeply influential on the communities that produced the New Testament. B-roll, Oxford's Bodleian Library, ancient volumes, reading rooms, scholars at long wooden tables. The Israel Antiquities Authority, curators preserving scroll fragments under controlled conditions. But with the excitement of rediscovery came a question that the Academy was not entirely comfortable answering. If the Book of Enoch was this ancient, if it was preserved this carefully, if it was quoted in the New Testament and kept in the Ethiopian canon for 1,700 uninterrupted years, if the Dead Sea community considered it worth burying alongside the Torah, why did the Western Church let it go? The answer is complicated. The Council of Laodicea in 364 CE, a regional church council that shaped the Western canon, does not explicitly condemn the Book of Enoch, but it is absent from the canonical lists that emerge from the period of the Great Councils. Jerome, working on his definitive Latin translation of the Bible in the late 4th century, excludes it. The reasons were likely multiple: concerns about its anthropomorphic descriptions of God, the difficulty of reconciling the Watcher theology with the developing doctrine of a single satanic adversary, the sheer weirdness, by Greco-Roman philosophical standards, of a text that describes divine beings entering into physical unions with human women. The Greek mind, increasingly dominant in the Church's theological culture, found the earthiness of the Enochic tradition uncomfortable. And so the most complete ancient explanation for the origin of evil, specific, detailed, named, and independently corroborated across multiple ancient civilizations, was quietly set aside in favor of a more philosophically tractable story. It survived in the mountains of Ethiopia. It survived in the caves of the Judean desert. And in 1947, a 16-year-old boy with a lost goat threw a stone into a cave and gave it back to the world. The 200 names and what they mean for us. The Book of Enoch ends not with the punishment of the Watchers, but with a vision. Enoch is lifted up and shown a future, a time when the earth is renewed, when the righteous are restored, and when the great judgment that has been building since the oath on Hermon is finally, completely resolved. The 200 are not the last word in their own story. They are, the text insists, a chapter, a catastrophically important chapter, one that changed the course of human civilization, accelerated violence, introduced death on a scale the earth had never seen, and produced spiritual consequences that the ancient world believed persisted in every subsequent generation. But a chapter, nonetheless. What do we do with a story like this in the 21st century? We live in a world that has inherited everything the Watchers left behind. We have their metallurgy, refined now into weapons that can end civilization in 30 minutes. We have their cosmological knowledge, refined now into the mathematics of relativity and the observation of galaxies 13 billion light-years away. We have their aesthetic technologies, refined now into a media culture that sells beauty with a precision that would have impressed even Azazel himself. The knowledge survived the flood. It survived the councils. It survived the 20th century. What the story of the Watchers asks, quietly, without forcing the answer, is whether we have yet developed the wisdom to carry what they gave us. Because the gap between technological power and moral wisdom is not a modern problem. It is the oldest problem in the world. It was identified in a clay tablet 3,000 years before the printing press existed. It has not been solved yet. The 200 names are in a list. They are specific. They are accountable. And the tradition that preserved them insists that their judgment, deferred for 70 generations, is not indefinite. What happens to those 200 names is not mythology. It is, in the ancient world's understanding, a still open case. If this is the first time you have encountered this story, I hope it changed something. Not the comfortable story of where evil came from, not the easy answer. The ancient, detailed, sometimes deeply uncomfortable account of specific beings who made a specific choice and whose consequences the world has been living inside ever since. The story does not close cleanly. It was never meant to. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Did you know about the Book of Enoch before this? What do you make of the Watcher tradition, mythology, history, or something the church should never have set aside? I read every single comment, and this is exactly the kind of conversation this channel exists for. If you're new here, welcome. Hit subscribe and the bell, because every video on this channel goes to the places that most people leave off the map. Mount Hermon is still there, snow-capped, ancient, watching. I'll see you in the next one.